Alright, in terms of Hook's kit, basically basic attack is very simple. There's no enhanced version unlike a lot of other destruction characters in the game. Her ultimate ability when she casts it actually enhances the skill rather than her basic attack. So like plain vanilla in terms of a skill, what she does is just doing a lot of damage to a single target and also inflicting with burn, which takes damage over time from Hook. When enhanced after, for example, casting the ultimate ability, you actually enter this enhanced mode, which allows her to deal slightly more, like 30% more in terms of the current level, and also having a bit of splash damage. So really this enhancement is a slight splash to the side, the burn damage stays the same, and it doesn't extend in terms of number of turns, whether it's normal or whether it's enhanced. So it's a nice thing to have, but if you're fighting a single target, it's only a slight damage increase in terms of the enhancement. So now let's go ahead and take a look at what the normal skill does without any enhancements. Alright, so now we're just going to use the ultimate real quick. It's a single target enemy hit, so as you can see, I have to select which one I want to hit. Let's go and select this one so that we are able to have a nice skill enhance later on. Okay, now as you can see here, after using the ultimate, this thing starts to glow, the skill. So we're gonna go ahead and press E, and you can see now it's a splash AoE damage instead. Okay, last but not least, I think a really important part and why a lot of people are actually singing praises of Hook, especially in the early game right now if you don't have many healers. One of the things is because once you have a certain trace that's unlocked, and she actually has the ability to lifesteal, so quote-unquote lifesteal. In terms of this Innocence major trace that you can get, she restores 5% of her max HP when her talent is triggered, and her talent is triggered here when she's attacking a target affected by burn. So over here, I started off the match using her technique, which inflicts burn on a target. So we can see here, now her HP is 1855, and I'm going to proceed to just on normal attack this enemy, and we can see that she actually is able to sustain herself. It's not a significant amount by any means, but any amount of healing and sustain in the Memory of Chaos definitely is helpful, especially for example you're running one side without much sustain as well. Being a main DPS kind of character, Hook actually likes all of the major central traces to be leveled up equally, but if you are finding yourself strapped on resources, like you don't have enough to level all of them, I think skill is probably the most important one out of all four of them, followed by ultimate ability and then talent, and last but not least basic attack. Why do I say that? Is because generally her rotation will look something like using a skill to deal a lot of damage, like more than double the amount that she deals from her basic attack, as well as inflicting burn, and her kit really revolves around burn, as we will see in a little bit as well. And of course ultimate ability, when you use it, you enhance your skill, which is what she likes as well, and using skill gives you more energy restoration compared to basic attacks. So I think the order will be skill, ultimate, talent, and basic attack. And her kit really functions around her talent passive as well, because when you're attacking a target that is being burned, she deals additional fire damage too. And in terms of her major traces, the peripherals, in terms of Innocence, this is a really strong anchor trace. I think it's really solid, especially if you are in the Memory of Chaos, maybe not running her with a healer in the second half, maybe because you only have one healer in your team. This is very good for general sustain, especially maybe you're running Fire MC teams, which provide a very thin shield, so generally your characters still get damage through that. This 5% heal actually does add up over the course of time. If you think about it, if you consider already 5 turns go by, and she takes one action each turn, maybe 1 or 2 ultimates, that's already a pretty nice 30% heal in totality as well, in terms of max HP. So very good amounts of sustain over the course of the entire battle. I think it's definitely one of her best traces as well. In terms of playing with fire, when using her ultimate, Hook moves her advance forward by 20% and regenerates an additional 5 energy. I think this is also really solid. Good amounts of action advance for a character who is actually very slow in terms of her overall kit. So very good as well. If you can level this up, get it as soon as you can as well. And last but not least, in terms of major trace, Naivete, it increases her chance to resist crowd control debuffs by 35% as well. Also solid because you don't want your main DPS to be frozen or something. It will be a bit troublesome. I think this is pretty solid as well. In terms of her overall traces, as you can see just by looking at the icons, she has a good amounts of HP in her trace, so this works really nicely combining together with Innocence. Makes her a bit more tanky as well, becoming of a destruction character in terms of her traits. of being more tanky, some lifesteal, able to take some damage as well. And also very good amounts of attack, crit damage buffing as we can see in the tracers. And of course, if you realize something that is missing is fire damage bonus, which we'll talk about later on how you can actually look to get these kind of fire damage bonus. And one thing to note which is going to affect our build is she has a lot of crit damage in her tracers but no crit rate, which will definitely affect how we modify her build later on as well. And last but not least, in terms of technique, when using her technique, this one is an attacking move, so you can't like stack it together with other attacking moves. It's probably the one going to engage the battle. This is nice because you immediately inflict a burn on the enemy target as well. Pretty solid if you don't have any other better ones and you're revolving your team around burn too. Okay, next up. In terms of Eidolons, I think Eidolons is pretty interesting. I have Hook here at E6. Let's talk about some major ones as well in terms of the Eidolons. E1, early to bait, early to rise. Enhanced skill does increase 20% damage. Well, by having this means that you really want to focus her in terms of having uptime on her ultimate ability so that you are able to proc this enhanced skill more often. For those of you who can't remember, every time you use your ultimate, her skill gets enhanced to do a bit of splash damage as well as increase a bit of damage. Next up, E2. Happy Tummy, Happy Body. Extends the duration of burn caused by skill by 1 turn. It already has a 2-turn burn already, and so this extending it by 1 turn is definitely nice to have. But if you're going to be using skill quite a bit, especially in enhanced skill, and you're maybe fighting one target, I think this is not as useful. But if you're fighting many targets and you want to apply burn throughout, definitely could be quite useful as well. Next up, when it's E4, it's okay to not know. When talent is triggered, there's a 100% base chance to burn enemies adjacent to the target, equivalent to that of skill. This, I think, is extremely strong and possibly her strongest trace, because one of the things about her is she's a single target damage dealer, and when you have that ability to, for example, splash this burn, it keeps the uptime and makes her much more in terms of utility for the rest of the team as well. I think it's really, really solid. The E4 is when she starts becoming very strong in terms of her AoE presence as well. Probably her strongest trace, but let's take a look at E6. Always ready to punch and kick. Hook deals 20% more damage to enemies afflicted by burn. So a very nice segue in terms of having added damage, burning a bit more, the burn lasting a bit longer, and also dealing more damage to enemies inflicted by burn. So as we can see, her whole kit really revolves around inflicting burn damage as well. In terms of Lightcones, I think there are a few options. Personally, I'm running the free-to-play Wolf Walk Time. You can actually get this max refined in the Forgotten Halls, the Memory Halls shop. You can get it max refined there. And here it increases generically Wearer's attack by 20% at Super Imposition 5, and also has a very nice damage increase for enemies affected by burn and bleed by 32%. As you know, her whole kit revolves around burn, so she's really going to find this very, very useful. It also applies to the burn DOT that she's proccing, and she does quite a lot of burn damage on the side as well. So I think Wolf Walk Time is a pretty solid one. Secret Vow is also another option that you can run. I think it's like second place, but one thing to note is that although it gives a very nice 20% bonus in the first part, she probably won't be as likely to use the second effect, given that she has some sustain in her kit as well, that 5% sustain. Not a lot, not tremendous amounts, but generally compared to characters who sap their own life, like Arlen or Blade in future, and Kara who generally draws aggro, they might be finding this more useful for them as well. So in terms of overall account balance, I think that's something to factor about. But definitely a very generic 20% damage increase, pretty nice if you ask me. Especially at Super Imposition 1 as well. So that would be like my second. I think the other one that is worth considering would be the Battle Pass Nowhere to Run, and the reason for that is it really revolves around a kit of some of the sustain as well. She generally likes building to attack, and destruction characters do a lot of damage. They tend to be finishing off units as well. So I think if you have a Battle Pass Nowhere to Run, this lifesteal combined together with that 5%, that 17% heal combined together with her talent, major trace passive as well, I think it's really strong. 17% heal for defeating a target when you attack a burn target. I think it's nothing to be scoffed about, especially if you are playing her in a team without a healer. I do think it makes a bit of a difference in the long run. So those are like some general thoughts. In terms of the 5 stars, I think of course something irreplaceable, a standard light cone that you can get if you exchange it in the shop for 600 of the premium glitter. It's also pretty decent. You have to defeat a target as well or get hit. It restores an additional 8%, so not as good as the Battle Pass one, the 12% that we saw, but still pretty decent, combined with a good amount of attack increase and also a 24% damage increase at the end of the next turn as well. Overall, I do think that the 5-star stats definitely will be pretty good. And if you're finding value in this video so far, do give us a like and subscribe for more of such future content. We do a lot of build guides on the channel already, so you can always check it out if you're interested in figuring out any other character too. But now let's jump into like optimal sets for Hook. And as we mentioned throughout the video already, I think one of the strongest sets for her will probably be the Firesmith of Lava Forging, fire damage, and also increased skill damage. As mentioned, a lot of her kit revolves around using her skill ability as well as using her ultimate ability, and this blends in very nicely with her in terms of giving her this additional fire damage, skill damage, and fire damage when using her ultimate. Really, all of it is very well utilized by this character. Musketeer of Wildway is possibly a decent alternative as well. It gives 12% amounts of attack, a slight speed increase for her, and of course basic attack damage increased by 10%. If you don't have time to, for example, farm in the domain, I think this is a pretty decent alternative you can choose. And I think the two other general sets you can use is Thief of Shooting Meteor if you're planning to run her into more of a breaking team comp. But generally, if you're running her together with like a main fire team, she probably won't be the one breaking, as Asta likely will be a much better breaker because of the amount of instances of damage as well as Asta's speed. So that's something to consider. I think Thief of Shooting Meteor could be ran, especially if you are maybe running mono fire in terms of Hook being your only fire. Other than that, I think Guard of Wuthering Snow is also pretty decent to have. If you're playing around a slight energy, the HP restoration that you have because you're running her without a healer in the team, I think this is quite synergetic with the type of play you're going to be deploying her into, where maybe you have a thin shield and not too much sustain in the team. I think this is possibly a pretty good one because it doubles down on the ability that she has to heal herself. When it's start of her turn, when her HP is less than 50%, you get that 8% HP and you regenerate a bit of energy, which benefits her ultimate ability, skill, combo as well. And then when you attack a burn enemy with her talent, you get another 5%. So it's a pretty decent 13% heal when you are below, for example, 50% for that particular turn. I think it's interesting to consider as well. And last but not least, as we mentioned, most of her kit doesn't have a lot of crit rate, so I do think that this is a pretty solid one in itself, so to give her that crit rate that you need as well. She has a lot of crit damage in her tracers as we saw, and I think that having a bit more crit definitely is going to be helpful. But for those of us who maybe don't want to run a crit rate as well, you could consider going a crit damage one if you were lucky enough to find quite a lot of crit rate substats and you are running maybe a crit rate main stat for the body. This is definitely going to be pretty solid as well. Other than that, I think like in terms of like the second tier or maybe third tier 2-piece sets that you can run, you could of course run this Space Healing Station, a very generic attack buffing of 12%. She generally won't go beyond 120 unless you are running her with a speed or Asta, so this 12% additional extra attack might not be used a lot if she's running mono with attack percentage boots, but we'll talk about that when we talk about main stats in a little bit. Other than that, I think that Sprightly Von Whack is okay on her. You get 5% energy regeneration rate, not tremendous by a lot, and you hardly will be able to use this speed as well if you're running her, for example, mono fire. But I think this is like possibly like tier 3, the third choice. I would definitely prefer more of an offensive sets to choose from as well. Now let's jump right into the main stats. In terms of my Hook, I'm actually running a 4-piece Firesmith of Lava Forging with a 2-piece Inert Salsoto. So and the main stats I'm running, or maybe let's say like stats I'm focusing on, I'm mainly focusing on crit rate, crit damage, attack percentage. Speed is also okay, and energy restoration definitely will be nice to have in terms of main stat for the link rope as well. So those are like some major things to consider about as well. Break effect is not bad to have on her, but generally if you're playing with other fire characters, you can't really determine who is going to break very often, so it might be also a wasted stat. In terms of body, I definitely like crit rate on the body as much as you can. Very solid, it goes all the way up to like 30-ish. So it's very, very good amounts of crit rate, especially combined together with the Inert Salsoto. You will find that you get a lot of crit rate value from these two alone without caring too much on substats. And boots, I'm running an attack percentage. One of the rare characters that runs attack percentage quite okay. You could run speed if you really wanted to, but I think a lot of other characters could favor attack percentage, speed a bit more. And the reason why attack percentage is okay on her is because of the burn damage that she provides as well. I think that is a pretty solid side damage that you have, and if you are running, for example, you can just mitigate it with members of your team. For example, she likes to be run with a buffer in terms of speed, like maybe Asta Bronya does see quite a lot of value in terms of this form of playstyle. Other than that, in terms of the Planisphere, I'm running a fire damage bonus And in terms of Link Rope, I don't have an on-set one yet in terms of attack percentage. A lot of my other characters are using them, but I would likely run attack percentage here. If not, I'll probably think about energy restoration rate. So those are my two choices. Okay, in terms of team comps for Hook, it is actually quite straightforward. Let me explain. Asta is probably her best in slot supporter. She provides everything that Hook needs. She gives speed, and with Lightcones like Dance for Asta, gives a bit of action advance for a very slow character as well, who generally likes to build a lot of attack. She also provides fire damage bonus for the rest of the team, and also attack buffs, all of which Hook really likes. So I think Asta is probably her best in slot support in terms of being well rounded. And if you're playing a lot of mono fire teams, Asta is probably one of the stronger supports. You could play Asta, for example, with the Harmony Light Cone that buffs same type damage as well. Works fine if you don't want that action advance. Other than Asta, I think that Bronya also works really fine. She has that action advance of 100%, which mitigates Hook's very slow speed already, because it just pushes up in totality, and she buffs crit damage as well, which Hook can also utilize. So I think Bronya is a pretty good alternative if you're not running her with other damage dealing characters that are hyper carry in nature. Other than that, in terms of Tingyun, I think Tingyun gives good amounts of energy restoration and attack to Hook, so which she does need. But one thing to know is that when running Tingyun with Hook, you will find that your team is quite slow, because generally Hook doesn't really move very fast on her own and really prefers some sort of action advance or turn manipulation as well. So those are my thoughts. I think Asta is probably best in slot. Very effective, free to play unit as well, Asta. And if you are running, for example, a team like this, of course mono will be the best. You could go into a Himiko in terms of AoE damage with very strong single target damage in terms of Hook. And the last one you could run, for example, Fire MC. If her shield is not thick enough, you could of course run a healer sustain like Natasha. You could run Gepard as well, or maybe Bailu if you're looking for some sort of sustain. But let's say you're running a Fire MC here. This will be a very nice mono fire team to have to do quite a lot of fire damage. I think that this is going to likely be much stronger later on into the game when we really need like specialized teams. But one thing about this team is you need more. For example, you could play Hook here in terms of switching Hook with Asta's position, so that if you play Fire MC on the side and there's taunting here, you get splash damage to Hook. Hook actually is able to self-sustain herself with that 5% heal and stuff like that. And if you're running, for example, some Lightcones or Guard of Wuthering Snow Relic, she's able to heal up herself a little bit more, so that these two squishier characters don't really take too much damage as well. So I think in terms of positioning, this is something to take note of. And other than that, of course, you could of course run any other AoE damage dealer. So I think Serval is a very strong free-to-play option in order to do AoE damage. You could run Pella as well to give you an AoE defense break on the enemy. Herta likewise works fine with good amounts of AoE damage. And in terms of Qingque with Hook, I think they don't really work too well, because Hook does like to use her skill very often to do a bit more damage, and Qingque also likes to use her skill to get her uptime in terms of ultimate ability. Both are naturally skill point hungry, and combined with Asta and Hook combo, Asta is also very skill point hungry. So all three of them compete for the same resources, and I don't recommend running Qingque here. Last but not least, in terms of AoE, I think Welt is a pretty solid one to run with Hook, because if you run Asta and you run Hook already in terms of the combo, Welt just makes that speed differential, making the enemies go a lot slower as well, so your team moves a lot faster in terms of speed up by Asta, speed down by Welt. I think it's a pretty interesting team to have, and Welt does offer good amounts of AoE damage if built for a sub DPS kind of role as well. Together with a Light Cone, for example, the Resolution shines as Pearl of Sweat, he also adds a bit of defense breaking to the team as well. And if you like such videos, do like and subscribe for more of such future content as well. We've already done tons of other builds of these characters as well, you see on screen, so go ahead and check it out in this end screen right here. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video.